15 years goes fast. Damn. First thing, just a couple remarks on Farley. You'd like to get around a guy a little bit more. I mean, we get on the trail together. Always appreciate his passion and energy that he had for the program, for UNI. He's got a hell of a story, and man, he's left quite a legacy. And obviously, fortunately, sometimes everyone's going to get to the end of that rope. As far as being a coach. But I know he's had a huge impact not only on the program, but the men that have went and been part of this program for a long time. Certainly have some conversations with him and going to miss him. But I know he's left UNI football in a better place. So I know that's kind of news today, and I think everyone was probably a little bit surprised yesterday, but man, we're going to miss that dude. And hopefully, I think they have 2 games left, right? So really look forward to seeing the team respond and really go out and lay it out there on the line, which I know they always do, but even, a little extra incentive, these last 2 games to leave him going out on as a winner, and he's been a winner. You see all the records that he has, but, just want to congratulate and tip my cap to him for an incredible career. And let's go win these last 2 games, for him. So if guys are listening, which I don't know if they pay attention to a wrestling coach or not, but man, go out and fight your tail off for 60 minutes these last 2 games, and let's go get a couple wins and start building for the future. I kind of always I don't have much to say. I'm going to tell you this, that it's really easy to talk about my team. The only things that's probably easy for me to talk about are my wife and kids, but this team, with a guy like Parker, obviously coming off a national title, coming undefeated, and then his first match this season, he's getting to wrestle a 4-time champ. What an incredible opportunity for him, and I know that's how he looks at it. I know that to talk about a guy that's strapped in and buckled down, probably even to another level these last 2 months, and that's saying a whole hell of a lot for a guy like him, to see the focus that he has, and the energy that he brings. And if you watched him on a daily basis, you would certainly, and I know I say it, but I can't understate it enough. The impact that he's not just had on his team, but the people that are around him. When you see the level that he lives and trains at, it's easy to see why he does what he does. And what he does, man, he's made it look pretty, I don't want to say look damn easy, but man, he's had an incredible career. And I'm just happy that he got that COVID year, and he get an opportunity for him to be able to wrestle this year. The All-Star duo obviously coming this week. Man, he'll be ready to scrap. That's one thing he always does. And Strachey's a great competitor. And I think everyone's probably circling that on their calendars. If they're not, then you're crazy. And I tip my cap to both those guys that both of them wanted to wrestle, because it's an easy match to shy away from for both individuals. And Parker's like, that's the only guy I want to wrestle. And so he's going to get to wrestle him. And hopefully they'll see each other again, again in March too. But man, I'm excited to watch him compete, and then obviously excited for our whole team to get to compete on Saturday. Got some really good leaders. I'll go through our captains. And we got 4 captains, and Parker's one of them. And you got a guy like Cale Happel, who's a 5th-year senior. He's very precise with his words. Likes to be very efficient on a lot of things, but you see when he's attacking and when he's moving his hands, he's as good as anybody. It was round of 12 last year, and the round of 12 is that's a very brutal round, and anybody that's been there, they understand that. But it also gets you where, hey man, look at how close I was. And so when you're that close, what can I do? What little things can I do? Because it's not big things; it becomes little things, and little things over a long period of time. And I think he's got to continue to make those adjustments throughout his training, throughout everything that he's doing. A guy like Ryder Downey last year, Big 12 champ, round of 12, leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. I can tell you that guy's put a ton of time and work in, a ton, a ton. And we talk about him being one gritty SOB. I mean, he is. I mean, you see how he competes, and you're like, man, this dude. But I'll tell you, last year at this time, I don't know how many people were actually talking about a guy like him. Really, like, well, is this guy even going to be in the lineup? Who's going to be the guy? It's going to be this other, it could be somebody else. And, he solidified himself as one of the best guys in the country. And so, that's probably a challenge to some of these other guys right now that maybe who everyone else isn't talking about, like who's going to be the next guy that's going to step up and do that. And you don't have to wait. You can do that as a freshman. Jared Simmo was a round of 12 guy last year. And you see how close and how small the margins are. And he really grew a lot, and I'm excited about how he's training and living right now. And then you got your other Captain Farber, who lives, trains, and I can say it consistently. Really, we have a lot of guys that are really going after something, and they're bought into something bigger than themselves, and they really come together as a team, and they care about each other. And so, I've talked to our team a lot about our culture and what it stands for and what it is, and I think guys understand it and they're bought into it, and it's not words on a wall. Like, they actually try to live it. And I keep hearing about coaches talking about college athletics is not the same. I mean, they've changed some things, but the roots of what we're trying to do and the impact that we're trying to have on these individuals and the sport hasn't changed. I think we can let all that other stuff get in the way. And to me, it's just excuses. When it comes down to it, it just becomes excuses. That all this, I'm telling you, man, there's incredible kids out there who are willing to train, who are willing to live, who aren't selfish, who think beyond themselves. There's kids out there that are like that, because everyone gets this now that, well, there's no kids like that anymore. No one's loyal anymore. Come to my team, man. You want to go down my roster? We have loyal men who are bought in and believe in something bigger than themselves. That's why we didn't have anybody leave last year. We went through a lot. We had a lot of turmoil last year. We had to go through a lot. We had to manage a lot last year as a team. And that kind of gets swept under the rug a lot of times. Because what are we going to do about it? We got to make the best of it. You have someone like Sean Kelly who steps up for us. I mean, that's again, just grateful. I'm grateful for these individuals. So, yeah, it's really easy for me to talk about my team. Really easy. It's really easy for me to be excited about getting guys to go out and compete. And it's really easy when you go into the practice room and you see how much these guys are unified together and how much they care about one another, how much they're giving back to one another, how much they're adding value to one another. When you come into the room and you see it, you don't just see it, you feel it. And I'll put that up against anywhere in the country, anywhere. Now our guys just have to really trust and believe that they can go win. They're ready. I'm telling you, they're ready. They don't need another match. They don't need another thing. Like, we're going to continue to get better at our skills, and we're going to continue to work. But some of that just comes down to, man, I'm ready to win. I believe I can win, and now I'm going to go out and I'm going to step out there, and when I step on the mat, I will act like I'm going to win from the first second to the last. And if I don't, you know what we do? We go back to work. And that's what we've done consistently as a team throughout our time. If I look at our team and what they talk about being gritty and scrapping for every point. They're very curious. They're asking questions. They're trying to get better. And they're really grateful for their opportunities when you see them. You see these guys, and you can see how grateful for they are. And the good thing is they're bought into the process. And, and we're trying to get them just take a lot of risk and give themselves the best opportunity. So when they step off the mat, they're like, man, you know what, coach? I might have lost that match or I lost that situation, but I didn't sit down and hope that it was going to flip my way. I flipped the coin over and over again, so it did land the way I wanted. That's what we're trying to instill in our athletes. That's what we're trying to instill in these men, and it's beyond the wrestling mat, because these guys are killing in the classroom. They're killing it. They're killing it. We were like 5th or 6th in the country in GPA last year. We had most academic All-Americans we've ever had. So these guys, talk about student athlete. These guys are student athletes. And you know what? We plan on winning a whole lot this year too. And I didn't mention everybody. Like I said, I can go on and on. I can go through my roster. But just for me as a coach, I'm grateful for the opportunity that I get to be around these men. Because I think once you get around them, you're like, man, well, these guys are a little bit different. And I love it when I hear that, especially from recruits and parents. because that's exactly what we want to be. And you know what? They're different. They're not different. They're just who they are, and they're comfortable in who they are, and they believe in what we're doing. And when you have a group bought in like that, you cover a whole hell of a lot of ground. And we've done that from last season till now. And again, we're going to cover more ground than anybody throughout the season. So, yeah. I'll stop talking. I'll ask questions now.
How have you fostered that loyalty that you're talking about, especially in the NIL era?
I think a lot is there's some swear words I'd say, but I'll try to, especially with my new boss over here. I'm gonna make sure.
We've known each other a while.
Yeah, but I think when you're upfront and honest with them from the start, when you know that, and they know that you care about them as an individual, and you know what, you're sweating and bleeding with them. You know, it's not like you're just asking them to do those things. We're doing them too. I think it's very clear that, you know, even my staff, they they could probably be other places too. They chose to be here. They want to be here. Those guys chose that, and they know that they're bought into each other. But a lot of that's not how they're raised. And we stay loyal to each other. We care about one another. We love one another. And I think you foster that when, from the first conversation that you have to the last, or, you know what, we're real in who we are. We're not trying to put on some BS show. You know, I mean, we're, and they get to decide if they're real and authentic or not. But I think you're just very honest with them, and you make sure that your word stays true. And that doesn't mean that you know everything. It doesn't mean you don't make mistakes as a coach, but you're very honest with them, and they know that you care about them, and they're getting better. I'll tell you, that's, you know, when people are improving, why the hell would you want to leave? Why would you want to leave? Where are you going to go that's going to be better? Just because you get some dollars in your pocket? Like, you think that's going to be better? You think it's going to be easier? And you talk like that with them, and you stick with them from every year, and why the hell would they want to go anywhere else? It doesn't make it easier just because you get some money. And not that we don't try to take care of guys, but if that's going to be their number one thing, and I think that starts with how you recruit them from day one, because we are who we are, and we don't try to put any show on. And I think guys understand that, and the guys that are bought into it, they love it, because that makes recruiting actually easier, honestly. You're like, oh, recruiting's getting harder. Hell, it is. Hell, it is. We keep winning, doing things we're doing, and you have more than one Parker on your team, it gets even easier. But I just think they know they're not going to get whatever they're going to get, because it becomes transactional. And I could talk about this all day, Andy, and I know I start kind of rambling on and on. But my point is that when they believe in something bigger than themselves, they know that they're improving, they know they're cared about. I think they look at it, and you can ask them, I think they look at it, where am I going to go that it's going to be a better situation for me? That's a big gamble. It's not worth the money.
How much does having a guy like Parker, who maybe could have had those opportunities, or let's say show the vision and the accomplishments that he's done, kind of sticking around, maybe contribute to that, and having other guys stick around too?
Well, I mean, he leads, and I said you lead the way, and he's led the way from the start. Yeah, I mean, it would have been very easy for him to go. But like I said, things become transactional then. You know, I mean, him and Leo spend, I can't imagine the hours that they've spent together. You're not going to find that somewhere else. That connection doesn't happen. A trusting relationship, like, you want to trust and believe in somebody in the toughest moment, in the biggest moment. You think that happens because you stroke a check? Come on now. It takes a hell of a lot more than that. At least for the guys that I've recruited, and maybe some guys, that's all they need. But the guys that come here and they see through some of those things, and that's not the number one thing to them, they came here for that, they're going to stay for that. Like I said, my thing is, if they weren't improving and getting better, if they weren't like feeling like they're getting something out of it, then I would understand wanting to leave. But obviously guys feel like they're getting something out of not only coaching, but, man, how we're teaching them is, you know, in life skills too. You got to ask them that, though. I mean, but yeah, does it have Parker? Does a guy like Parker, when you know he's going to wrestle on Saturday night in front of everybody, the whole country's going to watch, and man, he competes like he does, and he takes as much risk like he does, and man, he's really, to me, the epitome. If you're wearing other than blue and white, if you're not a fan of Parker, man, I'll take you out to the parking lot. You're crazy. You're crazy that you're not, like, he's not like number one on your list of guys. And I get that Penn State, but even the Penn State fans, you know what? Their asses will get up and applaud him because of how he competes. But yeah, he makes all our jobs easier. From recruiting, from everything. But a lot is invested into him too, and he gives a lot back. So it goes both ways.
Where's the next step for Parker? Does he have a new ceiling based on what he's accomplished in the past and where he can get to this year?
I mean, where they say ceilings are man-made, there's no ceiling on him. There's no ceiling on him. I think he's just figuring out how damn good he is. Honestly, Lee, don't you think he's just figuring out how good he is? Like, because he still has some. I mean, he talks about not really enjoying competing. Once he starts to enjoy competing, which he did last year, and you saw that, hey, I'm going after bonus points. When he became the focus, like, he got it every time. So, him enjoying competing, he's always loved training, and he trains his tail off. But man, going out and competing the way he has, especially those last two tournaments, when he's able to push some of that to the side even more, which. I tell you what, you better bring a couple bats. You better bring, although we don't let guns in here, but I'm saying you better bring some bats. You better bring something other than just your hands, because you're going to need more than that. That's how I feel like he competes and trains, and I've seen a little bit even more edge to him lately, in a good way, which he's just scratching the surface to me, and that's scary, I think, for the rest of the country. You know, especially when you look at him, 90+% bonus rate last year, and winning a national title. And you know, I know that's what he's going after again this year.
What are you most curious to learn Saturday night in that All-Star match?
Can't give away certain things. Not that they're not smart. Well, I mean, I think, Darachi's done a very good job of, being able to ride guys, being able to control matches. Guys don't get to him a whole lot. He's able to. I'm trying to think if I've seen him get tired. He doesn't get tired. He stays very steady. And not that Parker has to get a guy tired to beat him. I think it's just I'm interested to see how much he attack, how often he's able to get to him. And just I think two great competitors, man. Hell, man, when's the last time we had two national champs wrestling a match like this? That wasn't that they had a choice to wrestle. I mean, now you could wrestle in a tournament, you could wrestle at something else, but I'm trying to think of the last one where these guys voluntarily like, hey, we're gonna wrestle each other. I mean, you're the more historian than I am, Andy, but I don't think it's happened a whole lot. So I just think you got two great competitors and want to see where each other's at, and then we'll see who makes the best adjustments throughout the rest of the year.
What did you learn from the guys who all took trips overseas to compete on world teams this offseason?
That again, the margins are really small, and it's just proud of guys being able to get on world teams, because I think that's a great thing. It's part of what we want to do through our RTC. That's part of wanting guys to be world Olympic champions and those things, and that's a step in that process. I think they all came back with the understanding that, man, there's still levels to everything, but you can't duplicate getting on the world stage. I think every one of those guys came back, and they came back better, and now they just got to continue to use that information that they got and be able to use it with this. But just shows that we have guys that are at the world level. Multiple ones. We had 3 guys on world teams this year. So heck, man, I can be on a world team. I can win matches at the world level. Hell yeah, I can go do that at the national level too. I can go do that at the NCAA tournament. So I just think it builds some confidence for those guys, and I get to travel over the world too. So that's a pretty cool thing.
174 to heavyweight is not a jump we see often. How's Runyon looking? What went into that decision? How big is he now?
Well, obviously he's had a hard time staying healthy. He's had some shoulder things, and cutting a guy back down typically isn't always great for your health. I mean, building them up, and Jed does a fantastic job with the guys, and he's 220, 225. He's moving very well. He's starting to get more comfortable wrestling heavyweight guys. And that's something that's just, you got to get back out in competition and see where you're at. But Runyon's always been a great wrestler. I mean, he is. He's got some really good skills. And there's some things that he can do to those bigger guys that, is going to give them a whole lot of fits. You look at the makeup of our team, and Tyrell graduated last year. Who's going to be our heavyweight this year? So it just, to me, in having some conversation with him, made a whole lot of sense. To build you up and to stay strong. Like I said, he's moving really well. I like what I've seen, and now for him it's just confidence. You've seen guys that have been injured before. Sometimes it's more of a mental battle than anything. That, hey, man, I don't want to get injured again. So then you kind of hold back, but you got to find, you don't want to be reckless, but you have to be willing to take that jump too consistently and know when. And I've seen it in practice. I've seen some things happen that, okay, the confidence is growing, and now you'll get out and compete, and you'll be able to. But I'm really excited to watch him wrestle against these heavyweights, especially when he's hitting some of the tacks that he's hitting. It's going to be hard for them to contend with, and he wrestles through things. He's going to be in great shape, but I just think it's right now it fits into our lineup, and and maybe I want to say sacrifice a little bit, but like, okay, man, maybe 97. Okay, well, we need you at heavyweight. So again, guys, we got guys that are selfless, and they're willing to do the things that are necessary for the team, and to make us the best team possible. But I'll tell you what, I wouldn't enjoy having to wrestle that guy. I'm not gonna lie, if I'm a heavyweight. So we'll see. Just got to keep him healthy and growing.
You get Revito back at 149. Can you talk about his, I don't know the process to try to get the Olympic team and what he did over this offseason? I know it was busy.
Unfortunately, at ranking series tournament last year, he got hurt, so he had a surgery, and he's working his health back. But that guy, he got back on the mat, so he was in practice. Well, maybe the last 2 or 3 practices, and he's smiling the whole time. Like, the dude loves wrestling. He loves wrestling, and it's great. It's infectious for the rest of the group too, though, because sometimes you take that for granted. It's like he's just so grateful for the opportunity, and he will wrestle through everything. He wrestles through every position. He just had a little girl, Georgia, a little over a month old, and talk about giving you some perspective. Some serious, like, really life perspective. He's really dialed in a lot of other areas that's typically before maybe he hadn't dialed in. The wrestling, to me, in some of those instances wasn't the issue. It's some of these other pieces in which, well, a lot of guys they got to take care of. How detailed are they going to get? How much are they going to sacrifice? How much are they, say that they want to be a national champion? How much are they actually going to live it? He's doing a pretty dang good job of it. And he's on me right now, and he's on our trainer like, hey, come on, let's go. And we're like, there's some things we need to see. I mean, I love that that's where he's at. But, he had an injury. He had to get a surgery. Unfortunately, that kept him from being able to have a chance for the Olympic team, which I know he would have been. He was a guy in Italy. He would have had another opportunity to be able to make the team. Obviously, that didn't happen, but he's got recovered. He looks great, and man, you'll see that big smile out there when he's competing. We got a few other guys too at 49 with him and Allard, and that are Thorpe. That, like, hey man, they want to be the guy too. So we got some really good depth there, but I'm excited to see him back out competing. And it'll be fairly soon, but you won't see him this weekend. So we're just being smart with bringing these guys along because we got a whole season.
How's 133 kind of shaping up when you have somebody like Corey Land coming back off injury?
Yeah.
And Julian Farber, who's been
Well, that's I mean, it's not a problem. It's a really good thing. It's a good thing when you have really quality depth and you have guys that are going to push one another. And, It's kind of like, maybe you got two guys that are running, and it's like, okay, he's on my tail, and I gotta work to stay ahead of him. And not that the battle isn't always ourselves, but I'm saying it doesn't hurt to have someone breathing on your neck a little bit. We're gonna put one salty SOB out there. That's all I'm gonna say. And both guys can compete. They both wrestle a little bit different. Corey managing. There's some things that he's got to manage better. The thing that I was talking about Budo, just there's pieces beyond wrestling that if you don't take that into your everyday life and you don't account for it and you're not disciplined with it, it impacts your results. I mean, it just does. So some of that, you have conversations, and the most of it is them making that choice. And then you help bring them along, and you help show them the way, and then they decide if they're going to go down that route or they're going to kind of take their own. It's like, well, this route's, I don't know, man. I can tell you where that's leading. I've watched that before. Let's turn this way. And so you that's part of coaching. But we got two quality individuals there, and I can kind of look up and down the lineup, and you go to 65 with a Jack Thompson and a Weston. I mean, that's two scrappy SOBs, and 74. At 25, we got five guys. I'm like, man, I don't know, because everyone's like, well, who's gonna be the guy? I'm like, well, the good thing is they get to decide that. We got five guys that are scrapping their tails off in that room every day. I just think it's always a really good problem to have. I'd rather have that kind of depth and that kind of group of guys that are going after it like that, and they'll make each other better. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I can tell you from the place that I used to coach and be at. Like, man, we have to be our biggest tools for improving each other, our team. Can't be, we're not doing this with each other. We're trying to make each other better. And that's what those guys do in that room. Now, they all want to be the guy, but when they're not the guy, then they do everything they can to make sure that whoever's up in front of them, that they're propped up as much as possible. Anything else? Yeah, they're in the Big 12 Conference now. Yep, them Missouri. I don't know if they're going to add any more. Obviously there's a whole lot going on in college athletics right now, and that doesn't change any of our coaching though. It doesn't change anything that we're trying to do. It doesn't change to me what I'm trying to instill in these individuals. But yeah, that's a big. They'll be in the Big 12 Conference this year. They'll be at that national tournament, and I think we've made it clear that Big 10 and Big 12 are the two premier conferences in college wrestling. I mean, I think we're trying to get to where we're getting to on a plane with those guys. And you add the team like that certainly helps. And, so. But yeah, I will say the home schedule, get your season tickets. South Dakota State in the Dome. I remember, so I tell you, I remember as a kid coming to some of those big meets. You'd have Iowa State in the Dome. It was a pretty awesome atmosphere, especially when you have stands packed, when you have it in there. And they got a really good team. They've done a great job. We developed a little bit of a rivalry, but we haven't had them in Cedar Falls for quite a few years. So looking forward to that duel, and looking forward to having a packed house for that one. And then our season stacks up pretty good with the rest of the duels that you have. I mean, what an opportunity to be able to watch us, 6 times for sure, and then with those duels in the Unidome. Probably, for me, I'm planning on 4 more duels in there, so I'm planning on you'll be able to watch this team 10 times. I tell you what, I wouldn't want to miss a single one. I can tell you that, especially with a guy like Parker leading the way. Getting to watch him anytime, man. I'd drive a hell of a long ways to watch that guy wrestle. But it does make a difference for our athletes, and I can tell you on the recruiting front, it's one thing that kids talk about. There's a lot of things they talk about, but man, they don't want to be in bare stands. They want people watching them. They want to be in front of a crowd, and that's one thing with being in the state of Iowa. Wrestling's important here, and so we're going to do our part, and we're putting a hell of a team out there. So now you need to do your part and get season tickets, and man, show up to the meets. And if you don't use your tickets, then send them to someone else. because we want the stands to be loud and rowdy. And heck, man, you see Oklahoma State with the new coach. You see Nebraska as a top 10 team. You get to wrestle Iowa State here. Oklahoma's got a good team, so along with SDSU, Nebraska Kearney, and those duels. I mean, holy cow, man! If you're not chomping at the bit and excited to get into the McLeod Center, we got to have a conversation. What? Anything else? Yep. Anyone that we can or cannot expect, or most of our team will be there. Anybody, the guys that are healthy and ready to wrestle, because we got to figure out some weight classes. I would much rather do that in a competition setting than do that within the wrestling room. And sometimes you have to, but I want those guys to settle it. So you'll see pretty much everybody there. So another opportunity to see our guys compete this weekend. Getting down to Grandview, I know it's a big tournament. There's a lot of matches. But I was just thinking about Parker wrestling that last year and won a national title. So yeah, I like that. So might as well keep that going. Have some guys win that tournament and go win a national title too later in the year. All right. Thanks.